Hello and welcome to the Tissue Connection, a podcast presented to you by AATB, the American Association of Tissue Banks, and created and produced by AATB's Education Committee. We're your hosts, Josh Brennan and Miles Kuffner. Hi, Miles.
Hi, Josh.
How are you?
On a scale from 1 to 10, I would say I'm totally great.
Well,
How are you
I
doing?
need a number. Totally great doesn't fall in any scale or anything.
I would say I'm a
What's
fair,
totally great?
totally great. I would say it's an 8.4.
I think
How
that
are you?
I think that's good. I think I'm totally awesome, which is like 9.1, I would say.
You always have been a one number.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, and what would make it better is if I had a Starbucks and I don't have one in front of me. That would be totally just awesome sauce. That would be definitely like 10.1, I would think. But maybe when we're done recording, I should get a Starbucks.
Yeah.
We are also joined by our producer, the brilliant Brevin Herring. Brevin, hello to you.
Hello, everyone. How are you guys doing?
Do you have a Starbucks, Brevin?
We do have Starbucks. We've got Starbucks, Dunkin', and Tim Hortons. But I'm not a
Ooh.
coffee person, so I don't
T-
really go to any of them.
Wait, I
oh,
don't think
well,
any of us is a coffee person.
no, I'm a coffee person. I just
Uh,
don't in the afternoon. I do like the Starbucks refreshers. This is not a Starbucks ad, by the way. ATB didn't pay Starbucks. I just like
Disclaimer, we
Starbucks.
are not
Yeah,
sponsored by Starbucks.
yes, definitely not. Definitely not. Ide's in the background rolling her eyes at us. Anyway, we wanted to also give a shout out to Ide Barno, who is the Director of Education for AATB, who's our staff liaison for the Education Committee. Brevin, Miles, and myself are members of the Education Committee, so we're so excited to bring you this very first episode of the Tissue Connection. We have a fun first episode planned for you today. But I wanted to first, we'll talk a little bit about the podcast and what the inspiration was and the format. But maybe it might make sense for us to introduce ourselves, guys. What do you think? Should we start there?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Sounds
Miles,
good.
I'm gonna make you go first.
I love that. My name is Miles Kiefner. I have been in the tissue industry for 15 years now, which is crazy to think about. Prior to this, I spent a couple of years after college teaching high school Spanish and had what I like to refer to as my first quarter life crisis. Um, and I ended up in Seattle working for the iBank out there and have been very honored and privileged to work at a variety of different organizations, from organ procurement organizations to tissue recovery, standalone agencies, um, mostly working and helping donor families, but also spent some time in quality, and am now working on the processor side, helping to screen donors and do some partner education and also some chart review. So I've had a bunch of hats, but grateful for this to have been my career.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing, Miles. And Miles and I have known each other for a long time. We met at a LifeNet tip meeting, what feels like 1,000 years ago.
Yeah,
Um,
85.
but
Thank you.
yeah, something like that. Yeah. Brevin, I completely forgot to ask you where you are in the scale of 1 to 10. Are you totally great? Are you totally awesome? Are you totally awesome sauce?
I'm doing great. I leave for vacation tomorrow. So at the time of us recording
Ooh,
this, I leave for vacation. I'm going to England to ghost hunt. So that's we're doing good.
wow. All right.
Yeah.
I can honestly say I could never say those words together. Vacation to ghost hunt. But that
In
sounds amazing.
England.
In England. I can imagine the ghost, like UK European ghosts is our whole other animal.
All other based.
Holler beast. Brevin, why don't you go next? Tell us about yourself and how you got what you're doing now and how you got there.
Yeah, so my name is Bravin Herring. I currently work for a tissue processor, just like Miles, but we're a cardiovascular processor, Artivion, formerly CryoLife. I started my tissue banking career, I guess, years and years and years ago. Like many people that I've talked to in the tissue banking industry, I had plans of wanting to go to med school. And the plan was going to do trauma orthopedics. I love building Legos, and in my mind, uh, trauma orthopedics is like adult Legos with much, much higher stakes.
I love that.
So I started working at one of the big trauma centers in the OR, was getting to scrub in, assist in these surgeries, and I actually Sean Pearsall, he works for LifeNet Health right now. He was actually on site doing a tissue recovery, and I got to talking with him, and he kind of filled me in a little bit on that whole process and recommended I apply to be a recovery technician to get that anatomy experience, get that exposure. And then once I started actually doing the recoveries, I found out that I had much more, like, it's gonna sound weird, but much more satisfaction at the end of the day, because I felt like I had the ability to help more people through tissue donation than I did if I was going to be a surgeon. Because I feel like a surgeon, I can do 10, 12 surgeries a day, but one tissue recovery, I mean, if you're doing just MS and skin, I think it's between, they say 50 to 75, that number changes all the time, but and that's 50 to 75 people that have the ability to be impacted. So worked in South Carolina for a little bit as well. And then I'm also a tissue recipient as well. I received an ACL graft, actually came from LifeShare of Oklahoma. So it's kind of personal to me as well. So that's kind of how I got into tissue banking, and see a very, very happy path forward.
I don't think I knew that you were a recipient, Brevin. How did I not know that? That's pretty cool. Very, very cool. I have so many reactions to a couple of things you just said. I'm going to put a pin in the Lego thing for a second, but let's go back to, I feel like all of us have that moment where we're like, oh, this is it. This is the career. Like, this is the field. And what was that for you? Was it in the OR, or where was it for you?
I'm trying to think. I think it was one of the first recoveries that I did. I was like, holy cow, like I actually did this. And it's really funny. I'm still really good friends with a lot of the guys that I used to work with. Lifeline of Ohio, as like a side note, has produced tons of national trainers. We're all over the
Oh,
place.
wow.
LifeNet, Axogen, birth tissue trainers, like we're just kind of everywhere. But I still remember some of those cases where, and it was kind of that moment where I was able to do a recovery on my own for the very first time, that it kind of clicked. And I was like, oh, okay, I know how to do this now, and I can do it well. And this is going to basically be my career.
No, that's awesome. Miles, what about you? What was the moment when you knew?
I'm thinking, interestingly enough, I'm one of those people that I went to probably 15 different colleges, and every time I was there, I was like, oh, this is my college, right? Like, I just, wherever I'm at, I think that's great. But I remember back in those days, it was a really smart hiring decision. They would bring folks in for a 12-hour overnight shift to shadow before you ever, could even,
that's
they would
smart.
even offer you a job. Yeah. And they paid me $50 for my 12 hours, which I thought was like so cool at the time. But I remember I was new to Seattle. I had moved there. I didn't have a job. I had a part-time remote job. But I, had my $50 in hand, and I got on the bus, and I got on the bus the wrong way at 7 o'clock in the morning to go back to my new apartment. And I just remember thinking, I know that I got into this because I'm a natural born helper, but to have that paired with this new and exciting world of medicine and science was something that I'd never thought about before. So it was the first time that I felt both personally like I was able to play to my strengths, but also be a sponge and learn and adapt and grow. It was this perfect blend of both of those things. And I think the reason that I'm still here is because, yes, some days are familiar, but every single donor that we get to work with is unique and different and tells a story. And I think for me, that's what keeps me coming back, is I'm always learning something new. Nothing is ever quite the same. And this is a tangent, but I also think it helps to put, sort of my own guardrails up about what grief and death and dying and being sick kind of looks like. And I know, Josh, you and I have talked a lot about grief and the importance of that, but the ripple effect, this sounds so selfish, but the ripple effect on me to have that knowledge and to have that experience, I think has been one of the most rewarding aspects of my career. and
Yeah.
has enriched my life and my loved ones' lives so much in the process. This
That's
job
really,
makes you a better person through and through. And I just remember
I
100%.
agree.
on the wrong
Yeah.
side of the bus, going the wrong way, and
Well,
I was so happy I didn't care. I was like, I'll just ride the bus forever and think about the last 12 hours. It was just,
that's
yeah.
impactful. Well said. And I think if you all are going to do this podcast with me, you just need to get used to tangents, because I'm a podcaster. I do this in my private life as well, and we go off on tangents all the time. So you better get used to tangents. It's okay.
It's
I'm
what
about to go.
makes it's what makes the
Yes.
podcast so much more interesting.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
about to go off on a Lego tangent in a second. Don't you worry.
Oh,
But
I'm here for it.
I will share my background, and I think that I don't know that if there was one specific moment. I think I'd made the decision before the moment I'm going to share, but what comes to mind is a specific case. But I will talk for a second just about my background. So I've been in the industry for about 18 years. I'm currently the director of tissue operations at New England Donor Services. I am coming to you all from Boston. I know we're coming all from different parts of the country right now to bring you this podcast, which is the beauty of getting involved in AATB and the committees and councils. You get to meet and create relationships, and both professional and personal relationships with people from all over the world. So it's really great. Anyway, started back in 2008. I came from the world of EMS. I was a 911 dispatcher, EMT. And like Bravin, I thought my medical career was headed off a different trajectory. I was actually in nursing school and needed a job to work in nursing school, and applied for a job at what was then New England Organ Bank in the donor center as a tissue coordinator. And the rest, as they say, is history. I've been there ever since. And really, really quickly after I started, I knew that I had made the right choice. But there was one case where, back then they would let us, if we wanted to, if you're a new hire or early on in your career, if you wanted to go observe a recovery. So my job, again, donor center, referral, screener, family specialist, authorizer, that was my job. So we got to observe the other departments, and one of the things that we could do was go observe a recovery. And I happen to, fortunately, be given the option to observe the recovery of one of the cases I'd consented. So right then it was impactful and special. And I remember being in the OR and being like, wow, this is pretty awesome that this is happening. And these amazing donors are giving this unique gift to all these people that can have their lives either saved or enhanced or improved. And it was pretty special. So I always go back to that first case that I was able to observe in the OR of the
Gosh,
case that
I
I
feel
had
like that
consented.
was made even better because you knew that donor's story.
I think so. I mean, because I knew what went into it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I
You
knew
kind of get
that.
to see it full circle.
Yes. And that was the first of two times I was able to do that. The two recoveries that I observed early on in my career were both cases that I consented and worked with the family. And so there was this full circle moment, but I also had an appreciation for what got there. All the things that led up to that moment when the recovery began. I knew the details about the family and the situation and the array and the medical eligibility determination decision and all those things leading up to it. Like I knew what had gone into that and how special it was. So yeah, maybe I think to answer your question, Miles, maybe.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Legos, Bravin, for just a second, because I just have to say, really recently, I have two boys and married my wife. We have gotten into Lego Masters, the TV show. Like
Best show
we're
ever.
addicted
I
to
was
it.
on it.
Oh my God, we're so addicted to it. It's nuts.
It is one of the greatest TV shows ever. It's a show that my wife and we will watch. Because we watch it on Hulu, so we have to wait for the next day. But I mean, we've watched every single season. I think they're on like season like 5 or 6. And Lego Masters is one of our shows that we like to watch.
Yeah.
I'm not on that building level, nowhere near. But we like to judge and think who's going to get voted off, kind of like Survivor.
Oh yeah, we do too. And that some of us are like spoiler people, so we'll look ahead of time, ahead, and then some of us aren't. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. The other day, I got upset because my wife and son went ahead of me while I was at work.
Unforgivable.
And so now I'm like, now, guys, come on. Now I have to catch up. Yeah, but Miles, I highly recommend Lego Masters.
Oh, I've watched it.
Oh,
Well,
you have? Okay.
I've only watched the one with my friend on it.
Whoa, you had a friend on it?
Wait, rewind. Your
Yeah,
friend
Yeah,
was on it?
go
yeah.
back.
I need to. I'm actually. I after this, I will ask him what season he was on. But yeah, he and what's so funny is that it's such a like I met him just out with through friends of friends, and he was like, oh, I have to, I have a thing I got to film or something, and I was like, wait, what? And it was like a massive,
Wow.
yeah.
That's exciting. All right. Off the air, you
I've
need to
never
share.
built Lego in my life.
You need to share info with Brevin and I, please.
Well,
Absolutely.
happy to make it clear.
But it's like I'm gonna blow the minds of my family. Guess what my friend knows.
You're
Guess who
one
my friend
degree
knows.
removed.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, so tangent ended. Let's go back to the podcast and talk a little bit to the audience about why we're here, what we're doing, the format. So let's talk about this. So again, the three of us are members of the Education Committee, supported by IDE as the Director of Education, and our charter, our goal for the Education Committee, we are responsible for creating educational content for the larger AATB community. And that means a variety of different things. We have the webinar program where we offer live webinars 2 to 3 times a month throughout the year, sponsored by AATB, available to all AATB members. And we also have the CTBS, Certified Tissue Banking Specialist Review course that we update yearly for folks that either are new to the tissue banking industry that want to learn and get the information, or folks that are about to take the CTBS exam. It's the best option for studying and the only one sponsored by and offered by AATB. We also have an educational tool development team, and our goal there is to provide in-depth, long-form, asynchronous courses to dive into some topics more deeply in a longer form than the live, hour-long webinars. And we also are partially responsible for the programming of the AETB annual meeting, specifically the plenary program, which we're going to talk a little bit about at the end of the show today. But this brand new project is this podcast. I myself have some experience podcasting. Bravin does as well. And we've been talking about this for a better part of a year, and trying to figure out what we want to do and put all the pieces together to launch. And here we are. We're very, very excited about this. And our goal is to have another exciting and different way to provide educational content and learning and connection to the larger AATB and tissue banking community. And the format of this podcast is going to be interview style. So every episode will feature either a new guest or multiple guests. And there's going to be a little bit of an intro and a little outro at the end. But in the middle, the heart of the podcast episode will be the interview itself. And we're very, very excited about our guest today. But all right, the two of you, how did I do explaining that? Anything to add about the podcast and the inspiration?
I think I love this idea because it's both educational, but also it humanizes those of us who work in this field and connects us. We've all talked about the ripple effect and how well connected all of us are. And I'm hopeful that in these interviews, listeners as well as ourselves get to realize how similar we are.
Yes.
In our various different roles, right? I think, I always say this isn't like an Applebee's. If you don't like this one, you can't just go right to the next one down the street. It's a very special niche market that we found ourselves in. And I think to have this opportunity to hear from, I think, over the course of it, we're going to hear from some people who have been in this industry for a very long time, and maybe some people who are newcomers, and maybe some people who are tangential, but who we work with all of the time. And I think that opportunity for connection is hopefully enlightening and sort of, for me, comforting to know that there's people out here doing this work similar to us every day, 24/7. So I hope that's what can take from it.
I'm going to say ditto, Miles. That was very well said.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. Excellent. Okay. So we are so very excited to share with you all our inaugural guest, Mr. George Herrera. Many of you in the tissue banking and OPO world probably already are very familiar with George. He's been around for a long time. But those of you who are not, George is currently the chairperson-elect for the AATB Board of Governors. George takes over as chair for his 2-year term at the beginning of the 2025 AATB annual meeting taking place this October in Atlanta. More to come on that at the end. George is the Executive Vice President of MTF Biologics, where he oversees the Donor Services Division, as well as IIAM, the International Institute for the Advancement of Medicine, and Statline. George has 32 years of experience in the donation and transplantation industry and has held leadership positions in various organizations in our space, such as AOPO, AMAT, Donate Life America, and of course, AATB. We were fortunate enough to spend about 30 minutes with George discussing all kinds of things, including his personal experience as a professional in this field, as well as the future of tissue banking and what's to come. So, without further ado, please enjoy our interview with George Herrera. George Herrera, welcome to the inaugural episode of the Tissue Connection. We're so happy you're here.
Hey, Josh, thank you very much. It's my pleasure and my privilege to be the first guest on this new podcast for AATB.
We're so happy to have you. And Miles and I have prepared some questions. We're going to just have a chat about you and about tissue banking, about AATB, and kind of anything you want to share with the larger AATB community and audience. They'll be tuning in for the first time to the Tissue Connection. So I think first we just want to have you introduce yourself to anybody that doesn't. I think most of the people that work in the industry know who George Herrera is, but for those that don't know, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So let's see. I work at MTF Biologics. I'm the Executive Vice President of Donor Services here and been at MTF for 28 years. And in this capacity, I not only do all things donor services related, but also oversee IIAM, the International Institute for the Advancement of Medicine, and Statline, which are two parts of MTF Biologics. And it's been a great run at MTF, but I was actually in this field for a few years before that, for about 5 years before that, at Louisiana Organ Procurement Agency. So I actually started off in the OPO world and then got into tissue banking. Total in the field about 32 years, and it's been again, like I think most of us in this field, it's really a calling, something you do personally as much as you do professionally.
I couldn't agree more.
Question I have for you is, how did you get this job? Did you see it in a newspaper ad? I mean, how?
Yeah, that's a great question, Miles. And I actually use that as an icebreaker when we're doing meetings. I always ask, how did you get into this field? Because everybody has a story. Nobody, at least back in, for most of our history, nobody goes to college or school and says, I want to be a tissue banker or I want to work at an OPO. Nobody does that. We all have a story for how we fall into this career. That becomes a bit of a calling for us. So I actually started off working as a fundraiser at the National Kidney Foundation. I did an internship out of college at the National Kidney Foundation, started doing fundraising, and was a fundraiser for about the first 5 years in my career. And it was through that fundraising role at National Kidney Foundation when the transplant games started. And we were trying to bring the transplant games to New Orleans. And so we partnered with LOPA to put together a proposal, and we had to get all the venues lined up and all of the accommodations and just put together this whole proposal to bring the transplant games to New Orleans. Now, we weren't successful. They eventually ended up going to, I think, Indiana, if I remember correctly, was the first transplant games. But in doing so, I got to work very closely with the OPO folks and got to know them. And this was at a time, so now we're talking about 1993, 94, maybe 92, can't remember now, this is when most hospital development was being done by nurses. And so I was one of the first non-nurse hospital developers, because I had a more of a marketing background, communications background, to start in this field. So so that's how it happened. It really happened through the National Kidney Foundation and the Transplant Games.
You brought up a really good point. I think all of, and that's fascinating that you came in via the National Kidney Foundation and the Transplant Games. I hadn't heard that one. And that's the thing, right? I think a lot of us have these unique backgrounds that suddenly we find ourselves, oh, this is a pretty cool industry. Maybe this will be my career. And you weren't expecting it. I had a similar, I had no idea. This was a pit stop on the way to finishing nursing school, and that was 18 years ago.
Yeah,
and I'm still here, right? So that's a really good point, and that's a great icebreaker, actually, too, for most of us. George, can you talk a little bit about your role at AATB and what's on the horizon for you, and what your responsibilities will be?
Yeah, so lots going on at AATB. So for the last 2 years, I've been serving as the Chair-Elect of the Board of Governors. I was elected a couple of years ago. Great honor. Been following in the footsteps of some really great leadership that we've had at the AATB, and so it was my turn. I think it's a professional obligation to give back to our field and to volunteer and get involved. So I definitely encourage anyone listening in our field to get involved, as all of us are in the AATB. So thank you for your service. And please get involved. And that's what I did. I was like, I'm going to get involved. And this is actually my second tour on the Board of Governors. I served as the chair of the Council of Accredited Tissue Banks previously, and on the board as such. But now that my second year as chair-elect is coming to an end, I'm going to be serving as the chair, and that chair role is going to be changing a little bit, because the AATB is going to be changing in the years to come. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, I'm sure, soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important for folks to understand the structure of AATB. And I couldn't agree with you more, by the way. I mean, I think most of the connections I've made personally throughout the industry started basically at my first annual meeting. Fortunate enough to go when I took my CTBS exam back in 2010. And since then, being able to go to some of the other in-person events, just making these connections. Miles and I met at a LifeNet tip meeting, what seems like 100 years ago, and we've been friends and colleagues ever since. And so I couldn't agree with you more to get involved. Miles, would you agree with that?
I think I always refer to this job as you learn things you never knew, and you meet people that you never thought you would have met, and it's such a small community, right? I mean, I think in high school we used to play, like 2 degrees of separation, 6 degrees of separation. I really think in the industry, after 5, 10, 15, 30 plus years, when I see someone that I haven't met before, I'm like, wait, what? How did I not have that connection? So I think, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I have another question. I want to come back a little bit to your background and your career journey, and then I want to come back to AATB, because I think it's important for the audience to hear a little bit about what the future is. But I think it's important for us to talk a little bit about the structure of AATB and how folks can get involved, the difference between the Board of Governors, councils, and committees. I think that's important for us to highlight. However, before we do that, what has been the most surprising and inspiring moment for you so far in your career? Starting maybe back in LOPA all the way through your work with MTF and AATB. What's been the most inspiring moment?
I don't know if it's one moment, but what always inspires me, and just I think it's at the center of, for many of us, the work that we do, is the courage and strength of donors and their family. Again, at a very difficult time in deceased donation, people have either already signed up to be a registered donor, or their family is saying yes to donation, and that strength, that unselfishness is just very inspiring to me. And again, it is the essence of donation and transplantation, and as a result of that, of tissue banking. And so it's that's what always inspires me. And I guess I say that because I've seen so many, I've seen it so many times in the work that I've done over the years. And so it's the one thing that's constant is that strength and that unselfishness that donors and their families have.
I
That's
think it's
well put.
so smart, so well put. And I also think a huge testament to you as a person that as you get farther, we all have our roles in this, what I call miraculous relay race, right? That we all were here and we were all able to pass the baton at the end of our job description. And not that we don't do things above and beyond our job description, but the farther you get away from the actual donation discussion, the easier it is to have your perspective be, it always works out well because I received the donors who everything worked out well for, but to remember all of those families that made that decision on behalf of their loved one or supported their loved one's decision, I think is, without that, we wouldn't be here. So it is truly inspirational how often it happens and how that unites our community in this country and in the world, really.
And I would have said that before, I knew and we became a donor family. So I'm a donor family member. And so when I started in this field, we weren't. And it actually was as part of this work that my father-in-law, when he passed away, became a donor. He was a donor for MTF, a musculoskeletal donor. And so very, very proud of him. And I could see that with my mother-in-law, who's just recently passed away, and all their kids, my wife and their kids, and my kids, their grandfather. There was just a tremendous sense of pride of his being a donor, and he had a lot of pride in the work that I did. He was always fascinated by this work. So it did come full circle for us when that happened. So again, sort of having certainly always recognizing, again, that strength and unselfishness of donor families, and then seeing it firsthand through the eyes of our family has been a very personal experience.
Yeah, that really rounds out the perspective for sure.
That's a really good point to make. I think the longer we spend as professionals in this industry, because death and loss is ubiquitous, and the chances that we have to have it impact us. I work with a couple of folks that are now tissue recipients that weren't when they first started, and hear them talk about it and that connection to the mission, like that personal connection to the mission is super special and impactful, and something that, again, we talk about this industry being unique, and that's another unique piece is that we, the longer we are in this industry, the more chances that it impacts us personally. So thank you for sharing that, George.
No, thank you.
And so let's shift now to talking a little bit more about AATB, and let's do the basics, right? So let's talk about the differences between board of governors, councils, committees, and how folks that maybe aren't involved yet can get involved. So where would you start in that explanation, George?
Well, I think what I would do at this point is I would say get involved by, if you can, go to the annual meeting. So we have an annual meeting coming up. As Miles said, you get to meet a lot of great people there. You can get involved in all the committees and councils there. I say that because at this annual meeting, we're actually going to be going through some changes. We're going to start some of the changes that are really going to chart the course for AATB for our next 50 years. So AATB very soon here, I think this is going to be our 49th year. Next year in 26, when we're in San Francisco, is going to be our 50th year anniversary of the association. And so it's going to be definitely a looking back at a great history and looking forward to a bright future sort of meeting. But along with that change, the association is going to be changing as well. And I think that, to talk about the councils and committees and all those kind of things, structurally some things are going to change. For the most part, they will remain, very, very active groups that really, that's where the work of AATB happens is at the council and committee level. I mean, it's really where the work happens. It is the easiest place to get involved. Once you're involved there, you can sort of build up to, and some of them have had natural ties into the Board of Governors. Those are some of the things that are going to be changing. But still, regardless, even with the changes that we're going to go through, the committees and the councils are going to be just a major part of where the work gets done. And again, that's where really our community comes together to tackle the issues that face us in this field. So again, whether it's a committee or a council, I really encourage our listeners and people who may or may not be part of this field to get involved there, because it's again, I think it's how we all probably got involved in AATB. In fact, we're doing the work of a committee, right now. So again, I think it's a perfect example.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Miles and I, all three of us are, and we've got Brevin, who's our producer in the background. All of us are part of the education committee, and George is here supporting that. And that, you're right. I mean, that's where the work is done. I think probably like many associations around the healthcare space, a lot of the work, the meat and potatoes, so to speak, are the volunteer members.
Mm-hmm.
And I get, again, it's super rewarding. I mean, I've made incredible connections, networking, met colleagues I wouldn't normally meet, because not only attending the in-person events like we talked about, but getting involved in different projects, taking the opportunity to say yes and say, yeah, I can do that. And you get to learn more, and it augments your skill set, and you can bring things back to your own organization. I mean, what we learn every month at our education committee meetings is invaluable, and our sort of best practice sharing.
Yeah.
I think that it's funny for an industry that is so highly regulated and so standardized, the number of things that when I worked for my first recovery agency, I thought were a given because that was the only agency I'd ever worked for. And then you go to a different agency and it's like, oh, we don't have to do it that way. Like we interpreted this standard in a completely different way that works for this organization and what it has. And I think the councils and the committees for me I'm always like, I think this is a stupid, simple question. And it ends up being a 35, 45-minute discussion amongst all these people who are like, oh, we do it this way and we do it this way and we do it this way. And I think that has strengthened my practice and my work so much. And I think that's the value of getting involved, is you learn things you never knew.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It reminds me of one of my favorite quips that I say probably all too often is, if you've seen one OPO, you've seen one OPO.
Yeah.
Right? That's it.
Yeah.
We're so similar, but
it doesn't.
Right.
Yeah, we saw that this week. We had a recovery partner meeting, and again, we had a best practice panel. And again, this is all basically we all do the same thing, and yet here we're 4 different ways and 4 best practices and 4, again, just it's there is a lot of flexibility. So again, I think the AATB, the committees, the councils, the leadership roles, and certainly the annual meeting, just bring all that together, be able to harness those ideas, those best practices, those contacts that really help propel our field forward.
I have a question for you. In that, the double-edged sword of all of this is that, yes, we are well regulated and standardized, and yet sometimes the data surrounding tissue donation is hard to quantify, right?
Yes.
One donor can save, and sometimes that's 50 lives, and sometimes that's 150 lives. And really, I think we would probably all agree that the number doesn't matter as much as the selflessness and the impact of helping another person or other people. But do you see AATB making strides in data and data standardization to tell that story a little better?
Absolutely. It is a major weakness for us right now. And I would say that the numbers do matter, because when we are advocating on Capitol Hill or at any different state capitals, being able to quantify the effect that donation and transplantation of tissue has on patients in the United States and really around the world is critical. And we've had a hard time quantifying that because we don't capture the data of what we do collectively very effectively. If I remember correctly, our last survey was back in 2018, and that was for data that was a couple of years old. And so one of the initiatives of our staff and our leadership, our volunteer leadership, is to focus on that area to begin to capture all of that data. It's complex. It's very complex. That's what made it so difficult the last time. But fortunately, Mark Pierce and his staff have some experience having done this in blood banking. And so we look forward to starting that in our field so that, again, we can quantify for regulators and legislators and all those key stakeholders the significance and the size of effect that we have on the patient population.
I can imagine that I mean, don't want to lead the witness here, but I think ultimately this is all for the goal of increasing the public's understanding, right? I mean, how many people do we know who are recipients that don't know they are recipients? And so is that, yes, data standardization I think is wonderful for legislation, and also the public's understanding. In my mind, the more people who know that they are tissue recipients, if and when the time comes for them to get that phone call about donation, they'll know, wait,
Yeah.
I've been a recipient, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's really, I mean, it certainly is about that, about just, raising awareness for sure. And sometimes people, are recipients and don't even know it and aren't able to connect the dots. But it really goes beyond that. It really goes beyond, how changes in the regulatory environment affect us and how changes in the legislative environment and even in the payer environment affect us. And so all of these things affect donation, they affect transplantation with an ever shrinking healthcare dollar. It is important for us to have a seat at the table, and unless we're able to quantify what it is that we do and effectively communicate that to the regulators and the legislators, then it's hard for us to make that case. And so it is a very high priority for AATB.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that, George. I think it's important for the folks listening to make those connections. I think we have time for a couple more questions, and I'm going to challenge you. I've got two more questions. One's more for the leaders of the audience listening, the folks that have been around for a while, and then the other question's for the brand new folks, right? So let's start with the more experienced. If that's okay with you, Miles, we can start with the more experienced leader question. So how do you see leadership and mentorship evolving in the tissue banking industry?
That's a really great question. And I think that I don't know if it's a unique point in time, but certainly one that I'm very aware of, in that we have a lot of leaders, a lot of people that have been leaders in our field who are getting to that retirement age. I think it seems to me, at least maybe because I'm, of a certain age, that the last 5 to 7 years, I've just known a lot of people that have reached that point in their career and are retiring, which is great for them. We're very happy and glad that they're starting that new chapter in their lives. But it just reiterates that as a field, not only as individual organizations, but as a field, we have to make sure that we are developing a good, steady, consistent pipeline of talent that is going to come in and be ready and have all those experiences and been developed to be able to step into the roles as people move on in their career. And so one of the ways that the AATB is doing that, I think we do that at each of our own organizations. We certainly do it at the Board of Governors level, where we try to develop our volunteers or volunteer board members and council members and committee members to get as much experience and bring them up in their AATB experiences, so that when they come to the board level, they've had a variety of experiences. But as an association, we have a really great emerging leaders program, and I've had the privilege of being a mentor in that program and seen some really great, really sharp people come through the program. And again, I think that's one example of what we're doing to build tomorrow's leaders. And so again, another plug for another AATB meeting. If you haven't been to an emerging leaders meeting and conference, I would encourage you to participate. It is a really great conference, couple days, but it's significant investment in your professional development and a really great service that AATB provides.
I completely agree, George. And I think either registration is open or opening soon for emerging leaders for the fall. And I've got colleagues that have been through and that can't say enough great things about that opportunity. It's very cool.
Yeah, so it's a great program. Again, it's not very big, which is nice. It makes it kind of small and intimate. You get to know, again, Miles, to your point, you get to meet a whole other great group of people who are, kind of in the same career trajectory as you are. So again, start speaking to your leadership and seeing if you're able to attend. And if you're a leader at a tissue processing or tissue recovery organization or accredited tissue bank, keep in mind that we do offer this. If you're developing leaders within your organization, it's another great tool to be able to use here in that development.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's one of those mutually beneficial, you think, oh, I'll go in as a leader. I've had X number of years in leadership. Maybe I could help. But all of the mentor and mentee relationships I've had have been so it's somehow greater than the sum of its parts, right? And I still reach out to my mentor on the daily. So I think that's worth it.
Yes, definitely.
All right, and
for Frontline, Josh.
The final question. All right, so you want me to ask it, Miles? Okay. So the final question for the newer folks. So that was a great answer for the leaders and the folks that have been here a while. And besides what we've talked about with regards to AATB and in-person programming and networking, what advice would you give to someone just starting out in their career in transplantation and donation, specifically tissue banking?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I would say is, and you all know this as seasoned professionals, is that there's so many elements to our field. Again, I got in on the development and communication side of things, segued into tissue banking sort of, by accident almost, because our OPO did tissue recovery, but also did tissue distribution back in the day when an OPO actually participated in distributing tissue back to the hospital community. And so I would say get involved in all the various aspects of it. So you may be coming on board as a tissue recovery coordinator or as a donor coordinator who's speaking to families and hospitals, but there's so many elements of the job, whether it's QA or development or processing. And it's such a wide and broad field that once you're into it and one part, certainly get to be an expert in that part, know your craft, but then look at the space to your left and the space to your right, because it's a very broad field. And I think that, again, we're always, there are going to be areas that we sort of naturally gravitate to as we grow in our careers. And so just make sure you see and understand the full breadth of what tissue banking has to offer, because it is a very broad field that really, I think, allows us to use our talents in a variety of different ways.
Completely agree. We talk a lot about that for new hires that are starting out at my organization. We say, have peripheral vision. Like, look around, pay attention to what's going on around you. It's invaluable, and that's great advice, George. Thank you.
The way
listen. Go ahead.
When you walk in, sorry, Josh. When you walk into a mall and you are like, you are here, you should be able to figure out how to get, to all the other areas of the mall, because they are also interconnected and in different ways. And the path isn't always linear, right? The relationship that hospital development coordinators have on the recovery staff and the funeral home and even on to processing. I think once I saw my first donor get processed, I was like, I wish I had known this when I was doing drays. But I wouldn't, they were too far down the line that I never would have thought I was connected, but we are all so connected. So I think that's wonderful, great advice. And carve out time as soon as you can to go shadow, just show up to see something that you haven't seen before, because you're more connected than you think.
Great
that's
analogy.
I'm going to use that one, Miles.
Yeah, I like it. TM Miles. 2025. All right. Well, George, we are going to finish things up here. We can't thank you enough for being our first guest. What we're going to do for every interviewee, we're going to finish out with a rapid fire question. It's the this or that questions, and we didn't tell George ahead of time what these questions were going to be. George, you're going to answer without thinking. This allows the audience to get to know you a little bit better on the personal level. We know all about your career now, but we want to hear about the person that George Herrera is. So these going to be quick. Don't think about it. Okay, here we go. Ready? First question: coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Nice. Morning person or night owl?
Both, but more, I'd say night owl.
Okay, I like it. I would have guessed morning person for you. I don't know why. Yeah. Dog person or cat person?
Oh, Again, both. We love them both. We have them both.
Excellent. Beach vacation or mountain getaway?
Beach for sure.
Nice. Yes. And finally, snacks, sweet or savory?
Sweet. Have a serious sweet tooth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Excellent. Well, I for one know even more about you now, so I appreciate that, George. All right.
Well, Josh, it's been a pleasure. Miles, I appreciate you bringing me on here, and it's been a great conversation. Again, thank you for all you do as volunteers of AATB and for bringing this new education offering to our members. And again, please get involved and be active in your AATB.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Look forward to it. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Josh, how cool was that?
That was awesome. That was so cool to talk to George and learn all those cool things. All right. So were you surprised too that he was a night owl or a morning person? Because I was. I would have pegged him as a morning person, up, ready to go with a cup of coffee first thing in the morning. I was not expecting night owl.
Do you know what? I feel like I would have guessed that he would have been a both and for all 5 questions. I just feel like he's easygoing, fun to get along with. You know, I could go to the beach. I could go to the mountains. I like dogs. I like cats. I like to stay up late. I like to wake up early. I just felt like he was going to be fine with all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was the perfect guest for us to kick off this podcast with, to share, not only do we have someone that has been around for such a long time with so much experience and knowledge, but a long time leader at AATB. And AATB, along with so many of the other organizations that represent the professional organizations that represent this industry, promote volunteerism and membership engagement and involvement. And George talked about that a lot, and the importance of getting involved and learning from each other and creating a network of like-minded individuals, right?
Yeah. I also really took home, it feels like the AATB has been on the precipice of some change. Our industry, organ donation included, has been on the precipice of some change for the last several years. And I'm excited for what's to come, and really excited for the plenary program and the agenda, all of it in Atlanta in October. I think that under his leadership and under the association's guidance, I think we're going to see some really cool things happening. I'm tuned in.
I completely agree. And I think that, some of the things he talked about, go really hand in hand with this year's annual meeting theme. By the way, if you haven't registered yet, get over to aatb.org and get yourself registered for this October 12th through the 15th in Atlanta, Georgia. This year's theme, Driving Progress, Uniting for the Future. We're celebrating the power of collaboration, accelerating innovation, addressing emerging challenges, and advancing the field of tissue donation and transplantation. We're bringing together our friends and our colleagues from across the industry, across the world, actually, for dynamic sessions, impactful conversations, and of course, meaningful connections that really shape our world, our work in our world. We really wanted to have this theme this year shrink the world, right? Make it smaller, because it feels a little bit small for us, because I work with the same folks all the time. I get to see my friends every year at this annual meeting, and although we represent the entire country and beyond, it does feel like a small close-knit community. But we want to grow that community, and that was the goal here, to learn from each other, network, and grow the relationships that we've built over the past many years.
I think to your point, you talked about it at the beginning of the episode about the second session being recorded live. I hope we're in a spot where everybody can come and say hi and connect to us. We want to hear what you're taking away, topics you'd like to discuss, how you got here. That's my favorite question to ask people, is how did you end up here? Because,
Yes.
What was that term that you used, Josh? Stadium?
Oh, So we are going to have our second episode, as Miles just insinuated. We are going to have our second episode of the Tissue Connection live from Atlanta. Okay, and it's going to be set up like Radio Row at
Thank you.
the Super
That's what it
Bowl.
was. I
Yeah,
couldn't.
see
Clearly,
that.
Brad and I are not
Stadium
sports people.
roulette did not sound correct, so
I
I
was like,
was like,
Super Bowl row? I don't know. Sports.
That's okay. I'm a football guy, so it sticks right in my head all the time. I can go there easily. But that's the idea. So episode 2, be on the lookout. Please come see us. We're going to announce when and where this will take place. But the second episode of Tissue Connection, the guest will be you. All of you listening right now. That's who the guest will be. We're gonna have anybody jump in who wants to jump in. Miles and I will be there. Bradman will be there. Probably a few others from our education committee. I'm going to make Ide get on the mic and say hello as well. She doesn't know this, but I just told her now because she's listening in the background. But she's going to say hello in the second episode. We're going to have everybody who's there who wants to chime in and say hello. And to Miles's point, want to hear about you. Want to hear about how you got there. What you're looking forward to the annual meeting. Good stories about past annual meetings or whatever it is. We want there to be really just a great conversation and have that be our second episode of the Tissue Connection. Does that sound like a good plan?
Yeah.
sure does.
Excellent. So listen, I cannot stress enough that this year's annual meeting is going to be fantastic. We have such a great program. Please go to aatb.org, check out the agenda. In particular, the plenary program is what the education committee ourselves, we're responsible for putting together. Our keynote speaker, Dr. Chika Stacey Oriwa, just a phenomenal speaker. Cannot wait to hear from her. We have some great plenary sessions planned for in addition to her. And we have a very exciting breakout session, a rare breakout session planned by the core committee that is going to feature an international panel of tissue banking professionals from all over the world. So you cannot miss that session either. So again, head on over to aatb.org and check out the agenda. And if you haven't done so, register and come meet us in Atlanta. All right, Brad and Miles, anything else to add before we kind of say goodbye here?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head, my friend.
Agree
All
strongly.
right. Very good. Well, that is going to do it for this episode of the Tissue Connection. Please be on the lookout for episode 2, once again, coming your way this October, recorded live at the 2025 annual meeting. Once again, thank you to our producer, Bravin Herring, and our committee staff liaison, Director of Education at AATB, Ide Barno.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Bravin. Thank you, Ide. And I'm so grateful to our listeners for joining us. Tell your friends, tell your family, spread the word about the Tissue Connection. And until next time, keep learning, keep connecting, and keep honoring the gift of donation. Bye, everybody.
Bye.